For the majority of sim racers, this could be the perfect wheelbase. In this review, we'll talk about why. Okay, the usual disclaimer first. Simagic did provide both the Sport and the Pro direct drive for this review, but of course all the opinions are my own and they did not have any impact on the video or the script. So today they are launching 3 different wheelbases, one with 9 Newton meters, the Sport variant, then the normal one with 12 Newton meters, and we have a Pro with 18 Newton meters. Prices are $399 or 479 euros in Germany for the Sport. The 12 Newton meter base is $549 or 659 euros. And the 18 Newton meter variant is $699 or 839 euros. The euro prices are with taxes, the dollar prices without taxes. There's a front mount accessory available that mounts to the side here to give you front mounting options. I don't know why. I think that's not a very elegant solution. I would have preferred to just have the front mount available all the time without having to buy the front mount for like 50 bucks, but it is what it is. You can save 3% using code Dan3 on the Simagic website. You can save 5% using code Dan5 at Simrace shop. These are affiliate codes, so if you use the discount, you save a little bit of money and I get a little pushback. So we just look at the size. For example, here, the Sport is a very, very compact unit. The Pro is a little bit longer, but otherwise it's the same dimensions. And the Sport and the normal one are actually same base, same dimensions, same weight. As of today, there are no known upgrades available. Maybe that will come in the future, but for now, you have to decide when buying the base. I actually was slightly involved in the development of these bases. Simagic sent me a prototype like 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago for providing feedback and a little bit of talking and discussions about the features of the base here and there, but there's no money involved. There was just like my personal recommendation for them, what they can maybe implement or not. And here we now have the new Alpha EVO wheelbases. I actually recommended the name, super creative, I know, but they used my suggestion from back then, so that's why it's called Alpha EVO. Warranty for these bases is only 1 year. I don't know why. I think that's pretty weak. Like, have some more trust in your products. I would love to see at least 2 years or so. I think some other manufacturers offer up to 5 years of warranty or so. I mean, I don't see what should break on a direct drive, but still 1 year is a little bit on the weak side, I think. The build quality of the base is Simagic typical, very, very good. We have a nice aluminum matte black housing with some plastic elements on the front and on the back, but still built very, very well. And if we start to have a look at the back here first, we see tons of ports. First of all, we do have the Type B, I think it's called. The wide USB connector here is for the force feedback connection, for the base connection. And the Type C below is actually for the Passthrough QR, and I think also the dash mount. I'm not exactly sure about the dash, but for USB pass-through, you definitely have to connect the USB-C as well. So you need to connect 2 cables, this one and this one. Then we have tons of CAN bus accessories for connecting other Simagic peripherals to the base, so you don't have to use 1000 USB ports. Unfortunately, this is also CAN bus and not USB, so you can't connect like other USB peripherals here. I would have loved to see that, but oh well, not here. Then we have the power supply. And thank you. We have an on-off button finally on these bases. All bases obviously have exactly the same connections. This is the Sport. I'm using the Pro on the rig here right now. And what I also like is that we have all the connections on the back now. On the older Alpha series, it has always been like here on the side, and then it was a little bit awkward to route the cables. On the back, it just looks much cleaner in my opinion. Then looking at the front, we see no more front mounting. Unfortunate. I always prefer to front mount if I can. I mean, now I moved to another mount from Simlab because it's easier when you review a lot of stuff, but I personally think front mount is always the best mounting, most sturdy. But yeah, there are accessories that connect to the side mount here. Basically, it's a little bracket that has the front mount holes mounted to the front then, and it's a little weird, but you can side mount it. You can bottom mount it. It has the typical 78.4mm spacing, Fanatec mounting style points. So this should work with any wheel deck. But apart from that, on the front, we have this little mount on the top, which is a magnetic mount for dashes. It has power, it has ground, it has CAN bus, and it has USB. I do not know if Simagic will open up this interface for third-party dashboards. In theory, it should work since it also has USB on the pins, but whether they will do it or not, I don't know. I sure hope so, but that also means we will start to see a Simagic dashboard in the future, I think. Then for me, the biggest change on the base definitely is the Passthrough QR. It's still NRG style. It's still, in my opinion, the best quick release on the market. I absolutely love NRG. Like the Suzuki QR that I developed for Passthrough QR also uses this NRG style. And if we have a look at the board, we see on the left side, this is pretty much the old interface. I think this is just ground and power. I don't know why there are 3 contacts, to be honest. Maybe there's some sort of data pin as well, but power and ground. And on the right side, we now have 4 additional pads. 2 are used for CAN bus and 2 are used for USB. We'll talk about this a little bit in the future. I also show you my little hack how to use current Simagic wheels that have USB, like the GT Neo and the Neo X button box, without the Maglink cable and still having support for Simhub. But more on that later. Additionally, what else do we have on the front? This little RGB front light. First, I thought this is like a gimmick that's not really necessary. I mean, I still think so, but it looks cool. I thought you will not notice it, but you do, unless you sit super, super low in your rig. And you can have effects like flags or traction control, ABS notification stuff, static lights, whatever. It's a nice gimmick. It's there for free pretty much. And it's a cool thing to have. There's no kill switch with the base. At least there was no kill switch in the box for me. I guess you can probably connect one to one of those accessory ports. I don't really think kill switches are needed on a direct drive base, especially if they are not insanely strong. But yeah, I don't really have information about that. Power supplies, 250 watts for the Sport, 400 watt for the Pro. No idea what the normal one uses. I tried using the Pro power supply on the Sport as well to see if it gets more torque out of the system, but it does not. So no Fanatec cheap power supply upgrade hack to go from 9 to 12 Newton meters here. But yeah, before we actually have a look at the software and do some driving, I want to talk about the 2 major differences compared to the old Alpha series and why I personally think it's worth the upgrade. First of all, we'll talk about the Passthrough QR. For me personally, Passthrough is the future. I would not buy a base anymore without this feature because it's just so convenient to just go like here, take this wheel off, take the next wheel on, no cable, it works all fine. And yeah, I never thought cables are that big of a deal, but if you ever have to not use them anymore, you don't want to go back to using cables, especially when changing wheels and then all the manufacturers with their 712 different cables. It's nice not having to worry about that. I think nearly all the major brands do have USB pass-through now. I mean, we have Azatec. I think they were the first with proper USB pass-through. Then we now have Simagic, Conspit has USB pass-through, V&M has USB pass-through, VRS has USB pass-through, even retrofittable to their old DFP20 base. Big thumbs up to that. I love to see that support of your older product. I mean, it's still a very good base. And from the major players, the only ones we have missing is Moza. I don't know if they will open up their ecosystem to third-party USB wheels. They do use a slip ring, but they do not use it with USB. They use it with their proprietary protocol. So I personally don't see that happening with Moza, but hey, surprise me. That would be good. And Simhub. Simhub still, I mean, the Simhub 2 now is 6 years old. I hope there will maybe be an update in the future with USB pass-through on the QR. Out of all the USB pass-through QRs, I think this is the best. I did some measurements and this thing works with up to 10 watts of power delivery. It's not recommended. Simagic says don't go higher than 1.5 amps, so that would be 7.5 watts. But I tried our most power-hungry wheel here, the Hyper P1 old revision with tons of LEDs, high brightness mode, and I could crank the LED brightness up to 80% or so, which is absolutely blinding. And there the wheel is sitting at roughly 2 amps. If I go higher than that, and again, nobody will ever use such a high value anyways. If I go higher than that, then it will turn off. So I did talk to Barry from Simagic, and their recommendation is 1.5 amp, 7.5 watts, which is way higher than the USB standard. So if you use a GSI wheel, if you set the LED setting to medium, you will not be able to exceed that. But I don't think anybody will ever really use another preset than low anyways. Plenty of power available. For comparison, Azatec I think is rated at 1 amp, so 5 watt. VRS on the DFP15 is only rated at 500 milliamps, 2.5 watts. And the retrofittable one is, I think, depending on the connection on the cable. But yeah, this has been, for me, the best implementation of Passthrough QR. Zero issues with connectivity, even running the Hyper at high LED power with the display, no dropouts. But it always also depends how well a wheel manufacturer does their USB implementation. Impedance is important, stuff like that. So I didn't test it with every wheel that I have. I tested it with the GSI wheels. I tested it with the Bavarian Simtech wheels, and it worked just fine with that. If we have a closer look at the board itself, you can see this is actually spring-loaded as well here. So we have the pogo pins on the steering wheel that are spring-loaded, and this board is also spring-loaded. And then we have two magnets that will actually make sure that the two boards have a good connection to it. Older QRs, like on the GT Neo here, for example, do not have the magnets. They still have USB and CAN bus on these pins here. I don't know why there are 2 pins per signal, but yeah, on the new QRA or newer wheels, this is only 1 pin per contact. But yeah, but if we actually have, don't judge this cable mess here. If we look at the QRA, you see this looks now slightly different, and it also has the magnets, spring-loaded pogo pins here. But the connection is super, super, super solid. So this goes on here, and there's no flex, no play. With some NRGs, especially original NRG style, I did have the occasional flex on the steering wheel, but the Simagic version and also the Moza version are the best versions of the NRG QR. I absolutely love this. The only downside is the freaking QR is huge, and you can't mount it from this side. So you will always have to mount it from inside the wheel, or if you use a spacer, then, well, you don't have the problem or mounting a plate like this. But still, that's the downside of the NRG style QR, I think. Okay, now we actually change scenes. Now we need to talk about one thing that has been discussed so much on the Simagic Discord, led to a lot of confusion, and that is Simhub support of this base. You can see there's nothing connected to the Maglink. I don't even have the Maglink board installed. And if I put this on, you will see it connects just fine. There's the USB sound to Simhub. Does it work like this out of the box? Not yet. I talked to Simagic, and there's most likely be a software or firmware update in the future so that you can actually do this in the SimPro Manager, basically prioritize the USB connection. As of now, this wheel can connect in 3 ways to this base. There's CAN FD, one of the 2 pins on the QR board. To be precise, I think it's these middle ones here. Wait, that's hard to see. Here. On the right side, the 2 middle pads. That's CAN FD. The second option is USB. No, don't put this away. And USB is on this and on this pad, the data pins. Power still runs over this old interface. And the third possibility is wireless. That's what Simagic used on the alpha bases. So, how does the wheel figure out how to connect? Highest prioritization is CAN FD. Second is USB. And if it can't find any of these, it uses wireless. So, what's the problem with that? Let me show you with my, with this here. And we'll quickly go into the SimPro Manager. I'll connect this. And it comes up in CAN FD Chinese symbols mode. So can I use it like this with Simhub? I can't. So how do I make this work with Simhub? Well, there are 2 possibilities. The easy one is you take, where did I put it? You take a sticker. Let me zoom in on the QR. And you just put it here in the middle. So it covers the 2 contacts in the middle on the right side. And then when you connect it, you see it still powers up. You hear the USB sound. And it's connected via USB. And it works via Simhub. So if you don't really want to use any wheel with the CAN FD, which right now makes no sense at all, I think, because all the wheels use wireless and these can use USB or CAN. So easy version, you buy a Conspit base you take off the sticker from the Conspit base and put it on the Simagic QR. You can also use any tape. Just cut it to like 3 millimeters or so and put it in the middle here. No problem. Second option is take off the back here and disconnect the two cables. This is what you see. This on the bottom here is for the Maglink or USB-C, and this is for the QR connection. And again, here we have power on the outside, and then we have CAN bus and USB on the inside. So this is how the connector looks like. And if you remove these two wires, so what you want to do is like take something sharp, like a knife or whatever, or something like this. I don't know the English name. And pull up these white tabs, remove the cable like this, and bam, you have CAN bus removed. And you can remove the sticker and it will still work just fine via USB because the CAN bus is not available. Just make sure to isolate this. If you don't care, if you never plan to use CAN bus, you can also just cut these wires, but like removing them is super easy. You pull up this white tab, you pull on the cable, done. Or like here, look at this professional first try. Just use some paint masking tape or so. Just make sure that there cannot be a connection on these two pads, and then the wheel will just connect via USB instead of CAN. I have done the contact removal on the GT Neo, so I don't need the sticker. Can just do this and it works fine with Simhub. I don't know why they prioritize CAN bus over USB. I think it should be the other way around. But again, there will be most likely a firmware update in the future where you can adjust whether you want to prioritize CAN bus or USB. I actually had to smile yesterday because I saw the discussions on the Discord and Lawrence was in it as well, and he made this comment about the new Simhub stuff. Shouldn't need a QR update, blah blah blah. That would be a sticky tape solution. You were pretty close, Lawrence. Sticky tape, yes, that's the solution. Anyways, the other QR is the QRA, and it has a connection for a normal USB-A type cable on the bottom here, see? So you can do this horrible looking thing with wrapping the cable 2000 times around the QR, and then you can use, for example here, this Bavarian Simtech wheel via USB. No cable. Like, would be nice if manufacturers will have a short cable version of their specific stuff for these new QRs coming up. Or Simagic should also maybe develop a QR with internal connection, pretty much like this board for the GT Neo, just with maybe a USB-C on the other side of the board, so you can use it for internally connecting to a steering wheel that supports pass-through with internal connection from the get-go. Like Asher, for example, has done it very nice with a USB-C. Bavarian Simtech has done it very nice. Solpack, the new GSIs have a USB-C, not the current ones, the upcoming ones. So I think we will need to see a little change in wheel manufacturing as well to support these pass-through QRs. But yeah, it would be nice if Simagic would just sell this QR with this board as well. I don't know if you can actually buy this. This base side QR is still 58 millimeters PCD. So existing spacers in theory will work, but you will need new extension cables for this new USB signal and CAN signal as well. Okay, next thing we'll talk about the new motor, which is insanely light. Like, this is such a lightweight design. Like, if you turn this, it feels like there's no resistance, no inertia on this motor. And why is this good? They developed this motor from scratch. It's designed especially for low inertia, for very cogging free operation as well. Cogging is this, if you ever felt like these little steps when you rotate the shaft, that's from the magnets from the motor, and you don't really feel that on the space. Even when it's turned off, it's insanely smooth. Not that it really matters, but if you turn it on, it's like, to be fair, on most direct drives, you can't feel the cogging at all when it's turned on. Maybe on some of the older Mosas, it was not that great, but I think with the new algorithm, they improved a lot there as well. So while this is a nice achievement, in theory, I don't see much of that really. Like, it's nice, but you don't really feel a big difference compared to others, to be honest. But the low inertia motor, that is definitely a big deal. It also comes with new force feedback algorithms. I think they are not ported over to the old alpha base because that's optimized to this new low inertia motor. It feels very similar on the Sport and on the Pro, by the way. And we also have active cooling, so the base doesn't get hot. I did run this very close to clipping for hour-long streams, 4 or 5 hours. It gets a little warm, I'd say like 35 degrees or so maybe on the outside. But yeah, there's active cooling in the space. Ventilation slots on the bottom, you don't hear it. It's very quiet. They also upgraded the encoder on the space. It's now a 21-bit resolution encoder, which is beneficial for calculating force feedback signals. And now I think we do a little bit nerd time, and I want to explain to you what's good about the lower inertia. You can skip to the next chapter. It gets a little bit nerdy here, but I did prepare formulas. So let's have a look. Inertia and slew rate affect force feedback. You probably heard a lot of the slew rate marketing talk from other bases. It's so high and it's so good, blah, 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 blah. Inertia basically does a very similar thing. And what is inertia? It is pretty much the resistance of the motor's internal components, like the shaft and the rotor, to changes in speed and direction. So if the motor has a very low inertia, it can change the speed and the position of the steering wheel in the end faster. So it's kind of similar to what slew rate is doing. Why is it important? It allows subtle changes in force feedback to arrive quickly in your hands. Natural damping is minimized, and in general, this base, like the moment you go on track with the space, you notice how fast and reactive it is, especially with a lightweight wheel like the GT Neo. Like for me personally, it was way too reactive. I'm not the biggest fan of that, but I think a lot of people will like it. And it's super easy to dial it back down. You cannot dial it up though. Like if you have a slow base, well, it's slow. And so if we look at slew rate, what's that? That's basically how quickly the motor can change its torque output from one level to the other. So if we look at the formulas, slew rate, SR, is the rate of change of torque over time. So let's say if this goes from 10 Newton meter to 20 Newton meter in a specific time, then that's the maximum slew rate. And what is torque? Torque is this, for example, 18 Newton meter. That's the maximum torque this base delivers. I measured it slightly higher, by the way, but more about that later. Torque, T, relates directly to inertia times the angular acceleration alpha. Angular acceleration is like how fast the force feedback can ramp up, pretty much. And the angular acceleration is the rate of change of the angular velocity, omega, over time. So if it spins with a constant speed, the angular velocity is constant and the angular acceleration would be 0. So how does all this affect force feedback? How does inertia and slew rate correlate? If we take this formula and resolve it for the angular acceleration, we have alpha is torque divided by inertia I. And changes to the angular acceleration over time is pretty much like the reaction of the car to events happening on the road. So changes to this angular acceleration over time is what we feel in a change in force feedback. And if we put this into this formula, so d alpha dt, and obviously torque changes in that as well, inertia is constant since it depends on the mechanical design of the motor, we can basically see that this part here, so 1 divided by inertia and then dt divided by dt, so changes over time. If we look at this, slew rate, this is slew rate. So the change in angular acceleration over time is pretty much slew rate divided by inertia. So if you want to speed up your angular acceleration, if you want to make your force feedback faster, there are two possibilities. You increase slew rate or you decrease inertia. Okay, I hope that was not too much nerd time here. But to improve inertia, what you do is you make a very lightweight motor design. It directly improves reactiveness and precision of the force feedback. A motor with low inertia can start, stop, and reverse very quickly. And it will not overshoot any force feedback points because the rotor is so heavy. It will reduce oscillations that sometimes happen when you let go of the wheel because there's just not such a big momentum carried by the rotor. And overall inertia is fundamental because you physically can't overcome high inertia on a motor with any software tricks or improved driver electronics. It's impossible. To pump up slew rate, there are two possibilities. You need to increase the power of your motor electronics, higher current peaks to be able to do these changes in direction. This requires a motor design that does not resist too much to changes in current. So it also depends a little bit on the motor design, but typically increasing slew rate is a little bit easier than reducing inertia. And reducing inertia basically benefits force feedback like in any regard, whereas increasing slew rate will help especially for these hard events like crashes or where you go from low torque to high torque very quickly, hitting maybe a sausage curb or something like that. This is where the slew rate helps a lot, and lower inertia pretty much helps with everything in force feedback. So ideally you want both. If you could just pick one, having a lower inertia is a little bit more beneficial. Okay, enough talk about that. I don't want to bore you to death with physics and formulas and everything. We'll talk about the more interesting things again. I did measure the torque of these bases, by the way. If you remember, I did measure the Alpha Mini at around 12.5, 13 Newton meter or so, version 1, which was apparently rated lower than what the motor could achieve. I still did the same test, like I used the force meter, put the wheelbase into the bump stop and basically measured the force the base was putting out to return the steering wheel to the center. Oh, it's not easy on the 80 Newton meter base. And the measurements I did resulted in the Sport, the low end base. I measured 10.92 Newton meters. Same force, same torque being output with a stronger power supply. And the Pro I did measure at 21.42 Newton meters. Again, these numbers might not have the absolute accuracy. It's just to compare to other bases. I'm always using the same device. Only because I measured 21.4 doesn't mean that it's really 21.4. It could be 23, it could be 18 as advertised. It's just a rough measurement trying to compare different bases. Okay, we'll quickly talk about the software and do a few laps on LMU. There's not too much different compared to the old alpha bases. We have the steering range adjustment here and also the strength. Like I always leave everything on 900 degrees for every game and then calibrate in game, and the game follows the base and sets it up to the car automatically, at least on iRacing. LMU, oh, motion turns off. Let's turn it back on because otherwise the camera isn't calibrated correctly anymore. There we go. Then you have the basic settings, force feedback, strength. I always recommend to have it on the maximum and then reduce it to your liking in-game. Like that, you will not introduce artificial clipping. Then filter level is the interpolation filter. So if you have a low frequency signal, like for example in iRacing with 60 Hertz, the base can output force feedback with much higher update rate. So it will basically guesstimate what could happen in between and generate a smooth force feedback. So the worse the force feedback frequency, the higher you should go with this. For LMU, I'm running 2, feels good to me. Wheel rotation speed is like how fast can the steering wheel rotate, like in these scenarios of a crash, or like for example, it's hard to see it now, just like how fast the steering wheel can actually rotate. Feedback detail enhances low amplitude force feedback details like road texture and stuff like that. I don't really like that. I have it on 0. Also, if you turn it up, the motor will become slightly more noisy, obviously, because it will amplify small force feedback changes more, which results in more noise. It's not a loud bass. It's loud for a direct drive. It's not loud at all, though. Dynamic prediction level kind of tries to predict what will happen with the force feedback next. I set it to 2, but I don't really understand what the hell is going on behind this. Steering torque assist is the static force reduction filter we know from Simagic. So if you have a corner that's very, very long with a very, very static force, this will reduce the force slightly. Damping, well, You all know these. Damping, friction, inertia is the same on every base. I wish the damping could be even higher than 100% here. Like even 100% does not feel like tons of damping, to be honest. This could be tuned. Friction is a static resistance on the wheel. Mechanical inertia is resistance to changes of... when there's angular acceleration, inertia will basically resist this. Slew rate control, also a little bit weird. Like on the left side, it's the fastest. If you want to reduce slew rate, you put it to the right. Kann man machen. It's a little bit confusing. But yeah, 0% no limits. So if you do not want to have these harsh impacts, like if you crash into a wall, if you hit a sausage curb, you don't want that crazy high force feedback impact, then move the slider to the right. Then on the right side, we have the ring light settings. You can have different effects on the ring light, like pit limiter, whether you're in pit lane, ABS, TC, blah, 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 blah. I just pretty much use it for flags and the pit limiter and have it set to purple. Otherwise, it can get very bright. I have it like around medium brightness here, which works very well for me. So yeah, if you want to try my settings for LMU, that's pretty much the only game I play these days because it's just so freaking good. I can like go and play LMU. It's the best sim on the market, in my opinion, at the moment. Only has like 1.5 tracks, but still like it's really, really good. But we'll hop on track, I'd say. And first of all, I am using the Pro here. The Sport pretty much feels the same. It's just weaker. I couldn't really feel any difference in force feedback quality. But then again, I personally think 9 Newton meter is a little bit very weak. I know, like, for a lot of people, it's more than good enough. For me personally, it's just too weak. I'm used to very high force feedback. I'm coming from a 32 Newton meter base, so 9 Newton meter is a little bit hard to adjust to. But the 18 Newton meter feels plenty strong to me. So would I like to see a base with a bit more power? Yes. Something like the Alpha U, but like as an Alpha EVO would be nice. But I would be perfectly fine with these 18 Newton meters for the rest of my life. It's not like it's super weak. It will be more than enough for probably 95% of people. But if you treat your sim racing as a workout, then 18 Newton meters will still be fine, but it could be stronger. But yeah, the moment you go on track, you probably notice that this is insanely detailed in force feedback and insanely responsive, especially on a game like LMU, which has crazy good force feedback. I had to turn down details in-game. I'm using a smoothing of 3 or 4, because otherwise it's just too much. So I need to get some temperature into the tires here, but it's just such a joy to use this base. Honestly, it's if you like to have all these details, if you like to feel as much as you can. Oh my god, understeer. When the wingless Peugeot, which is a very, very understeery car. If you like to have all these details, like the maximum information that's possible, then this base will deliver. And if you don't like that, well, then you can always reduce details and run something that just is a bit more average, that feels a bit more like other bases. I'm not saying like this is the new best thing since sliced bread or so, like, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to have a base that is so responsive. And for me personally, especially paired with a lightweight wheel, it's almost too much. I do prefer this base with a heavy wheel. I've been running it with the Bavarian Simtech Alpha. We can actually, like, quickly, I can show you that base as well. We just, no, should probably not connect it upside down. We just quickly need to assign the shifting again. Shift up, shift down. And with this, to me, it does feel a little bit better because there's just a little bit more weight to the wheel. I mean, I'm saying heavy wheel. This is still like, how much is this? Like 1.5 kilos or so with the QR. It's not like it's an exceptionally heavy wheel like the Grid Porsche or something like this. It's more like in the midfield. For an aluminum wheel, it's relatively light. But it's 200-300 grams heavier than the GT Neo. And it feels a bit more like what I like. Like even with the damping and inertia tuned up on the GT Neo, I was not able to get it to feel like, what the hell are we doing here? I was not able to get the feel like with a heavier wheel. Oh god, oh god. Oh yeah, typical prototype driver, right? That's not what you want to see. Well, we are racing against AI here. But yeah, compared to the older alpha bases, this is more responsive. It feels a bit more alive with force feedback. The Passthrough QR is, like I said, something I would not want to miss anymore. And actually, I think we'll do the verdict and comparison on track. So what else is there in this price and torque range? Like, for example, the VRS DFP 15, also an excellent base. Compared to this, it's 200 euros cheaper almost. It does not have the same responsiveness in force feedback, but it's still a very good feeling base. It's a bit lacking in their Passthrough QR because 2.5 watts, that limits wheel choices quite a lot. I don't know if you can get, like for example, the GSI wheels with a display. Maybe if the LEDs are insanely low, you can get away with it. Like wheel plus display is around 0.3, 0.35 amps, for example. So there's that. Then comparing this to the older alpha bases, is it worth the upgrade? Well, that's a really tough question. It's not like the old alpha bases are bad. Like, if you like the force feedback of your older alpha base, if you do not need USB pass-through, I would probably save the money. This is a bit more responsive. This has slightly better force feedback, but it's not a day-night difference. Especially if you like your force feedback to be a little bit more smooth, a little bit more round. If you will turn down all the details this new base provides and just run it like that, you probably will not feel a very, very big difference. Conspit base, same thing. Similarly priced, the Aris Platinum. This one here feels... yeah, I'm repeating myself all the time, but this feels more responsive to me. It has more details. The Conspit is very muted, also compared to the competition. They are working on a new firmware that should improve that, so I'm curious how that will feel after that. But as of today, like the Conspit is roughly the opposite of this new Alpha EVO for me. So we'll still have people that will prefer that force feedback. Force feedback is a very, very subjective thing. There's no objective better force feedback in the world. It's just there are different force feedbacks. And to find out what you like, unfortunately, you will probably have to test the base yourself. But this thing here will be able to do a lot of the potential preference people could have. I'd like to see the adjustment range for damping, inertia, friction a little bit increased so you can smoothen this out more. And if they do that, then you will probably be able to make this base feel pretty much like any other base, I would say. We live in a time where direct drives are all good. There's not a lot of difference anymore. Like, as soon as you have a direct drive and you don't drive it close to clipping all the time, you should be good. Like, even first-gen direct drives still perform well these days. We live now in a time where it's more about features, pass-through, USB pass-through on the QR. Absolute necessity for me these days. I wouldn't buy a base anymore that doesn't have this. Other features like, for example, the telemetry-based force feedback from VNM. For me personally, VNM is still my favorite direct drive. I haven't tried the lower torque versions. I've only tried the one with 32 Newton meters, but that's my number one. But this base probably very shortly after that follows as my current number 2 potentially. Has great features, has great force feedback, has a good price. Warranty could be a bit longer, 1 year is a bit, well, not so long. And I personally wish there will be a base with a little bit more torque. I saw people talking about a Zeus base, apparently that could be the successor of the Alpha U. But yeah, we'll see about that. Let's actually quickly run into the pits here. But if you're looking to get into the direct drive market, you do not have a base at the moment. This is one of the best options on the market, I think. This, the VNM, I would probably decide between these two. The telemetry-based force feedback is really excellent on the VNM. This is something that every wheel manufacturer, in theory, can give you later via software firmware update. But apart from all that, this is a freaking good all-rounder, and I can highly recommend it. I don't really see a lot of cons. I mean, the confusion with the USB and CAN mode, something they can resolve in software firmware. The very responsive force feedback with maybe not enough adjustment range for damping friction inertia is something they can adjust in firmware. And overall, the hardware is really good. The USB pass-through has tons of power, works very well with display wheels, even with high power display wheels with a lot of LEDs. The price is very fair. We have the Sport variant, the normal, the Pro. I would recommend the Pro if you can afford it. It's always good to have the torque available in case you need it. If you're fine with 9 Newton meters, I mean, I know people that say like a 9 Newton meter base nearly breaks their hands. If you don't like to have strong force feedback, then spending that much more money for a lot of torque might be wasted money. But my personal preference is the 18 Newton meter variant. And if you're fine with less torque, well, that's something you have to decide by yourself. Apparently real race cars have like 9 or 10 Newton meters is what I heard, but I personally don't care what real race cars use. It's not like I will drive real race cars in the future. It's very, very unlikely. So we are in sim racing, we are not in real racing, and it's just a personal preference. The higher the torque, the more expensive the motor, the more expensive the base, obviously. But yeah, this review is going on for way too long already, so I will keep it short here. I will thank you for watching till here if you did. If you like the content, subscribe to the channel, like the video. I'll try to make more reviews in the future. Again, if you're interested in this base, Dan 3% off at Simagic, Dan 5% off at SimRace Shop. You get a discount, I get a little pushback, so it helps the channel if you use that. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, if you want to know anything about the base, I hope I covered it all. I mean, it's a freaking long review. If I missed anything, if you want to know more, join the Discord, ask in the comments. I will try to answer it all. But yeah, I think that's it then. We're done. Yay. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.